Music. Salam alaikum. I'm Raj. This whole paranormal thing that happened to me, it was back in 2018. In 2018 I had to move from Bombay to Hyderabad for work. The company was pushing me, I didn't have much choice or time to look around. I took the first ready to move place I could find through a local agent from Bombay. So this is the story of the house and what happened. We moved in around January-February 2018, the very beginning of the year. A little background on the house: the previous owners were a Brahmin family. The old head of that family had passed away of natural causes and the place had been put up for sale as part of inheritance. The new owners did some renovations, but there were clear signs the house had been used for regular religious rituals. There was an open space that had been a small temple area and not an idol when we moved in, but it was obvious prayers and rituals had been practiced there. This structure was ground plus first floor. We moved into the first floor. There was even a dedicated room upstairs where puja prayer used to happen. My parents lived nearby in Hyderabad, just a few blocks away. This was in a busy area famous like Medapatnam. When my dad found out everything was finalized, he came over and said, "Son, I'll recite Surah Baqarah here." I said, "Okay, go ahead." That night my dad came and nobody else was home. We weren't fully moved in yet, we were still in transitioning, but I had come to Hyderabad for paperwork. After Maghrib evening prayer, my dad laid out a musalla and started reciting the Quran in the master bedroom. As he began reciting Surah Baqarah, there was a very loud banging on the door as if someone was hitting it with great force. My dad went out to check and nobody was there. He thought maybe some labourer had left tools or something and someone was coming back to collect them, but there was nothing. Still, he left the door slightly ajar and went back to finish the recitation. Then the banging came again and non-stop, like the doorbell being slammed repeatedly. He got up and checked again, the door open, no one outside. He was puzzled. He tried to continue, but the third time it happened, the atmosphere changed and he couldn't continue reciting. That was the first incident. He didn't tell me about it right away, since the paperwork was already done and everything was final. He didn't think telling me would help. But that was the first thing. The second incident I'll recount myself. I was a witness. This was some time later. Our son was doing homework in the living room around dusk. There's a window on the right side of the hall that's always closed. It faces where the washing machine and utility area are, so we never used it. My son told us that he saw someone at that closed window. He described the figure in a way that really startled us. The figure had no clothes on, only the torso was visible, just the upper body, and it was staring inside through the closed window. He noticed a sacred thread across the shoulder, the kind Brahmin men wear, and said the figure had a very dark complexion. He was terrified. I asked him if it was still there and he said no, it had gone. After that incident I felt like we should step up our precautions. We had already been reciting a little, but after that I asked my dad to do more. That's when things started to get intense. We'd been living there about 2 months and for the first 2 months things were pretty normal. I personally didn't notice anything strange at first. But around 2 to 2.5 months in, my wife began to feel odd things in the kitchen area in the early evening, of the sensation of someone walking behind her, the feeling of a presence passing close by, like a cold draft brushing past. You get that feeling you have when someone is right behind you, but when you turn there's nothing there. She told me about these shadowy movements during the day. I tried to tell her not to get spooked. Sometimes the mind plays tricks, but then things escalated. One night around 8:39 p.m. I went into the kids' room. Suddenly my wife and I started arguing heatedly out of nowhere. It wasn't about anything real, the argument just flared up. While it was happening, the ceiling fan, which normally rotates smoothly, started moving like a pendulum, swinging back and forth as dead as spinning. It looked like someone set it into a pendulum motion. That was strange and unnerving. We stopped the argument, stepped out of the room, and recited a little prayer while sitting on a chair. That was the first time both of us really noticed something physically wrong with the place. I called my dad and asked him to stay with us for a week. After he came, incidents increased in frequency. For example, late at night while I was working in my room, I'd see a shadow in the passageway. The light would be on and you could clearly feel like someone was standing out there by the door. You could almost make out the shape, like a shadowy figure, though sometimes you couldn't see legs, just a silhouette, a reflection of a figure. When I'd go and check, there'd be nothing. Then one night while my wife was sleeping, she saw the same dark figure our son had described, this time above our wardrobe on top of a cupboard. It was the same torso-like figure, the same sacred thread across the shoulder. She experienced sleep paralysis. She couldn't move or speak for a long time, and when she could finally speak, she told me, "I can't stay in this house." That really shook us. A more terrifying incident happened when I was at the office and the kids were at school. The cleaner had left and my wife was alone. As she entered the bedroom, she felt something moving inside the mattress cover, like a small child running around under the sheet. It was a very distinct feeling, like the rustling and the playfulness of a child under the blanket. She was petrified and called me crying, "I can't stay here for even a second." She explained the whole thing and I immediately called the owner and told him what was happening. I told him there were back-to-back incidents, that we weren't physically harmed, but the frequency and intensity were increasing now several times a week, sometimes multiple times a day. The owner told us not to worry. He said he knew someone, a Hafiz, a man who has memorized the Quran, who would come and recite Surah Baqarah for 40 days straight in the house, and that would fix everything. We agreed. My wife invited her father and brother to come stay for support because I'm out at the office during the day and she was scared. They came and we gave them the kids' room with the attached bathroom. 2 days later the Hafiz arrived and began the recitation. He would come, recite after Fajr and other times with a loud, clear voice, right from the central place of the house so the sound would reach every room. He made sure there was silence so the recitation could be heard throughout. He would come, recite and leave it, and he kept coming every day for 40 days. My wife's father and brother were there during this too. On the 4th or 5th day of the recitation, my father-in-law came out of the room very surprised. He told us there was a very odd smell in the house, not like garbage or a dead animal, something unique. He said it smelled like the burning at the cremation ground. He'd smelled that smell before in other places and this was the same. He checked upstairs, downstairs, the bathrooms, every corner, and nothing but the smell seemed to be concentrated around the doorway right at the threshold as you exited the bedroom into the passage. Hearing that made all of us sit up and take it very seriously. After that, we could all sense the energy in the house shifting, everyone could feel it. We told my younger brother about everything. Initially he joked and said I was overthinking. But about 25 days into the recitation, he called me early in the morning saying, "I had a dream about you." He said I had video called him and on the call there was a burning skull, a ring of fire, and inside that ring was a man rotating, trapped, screaming, crying, trying to get out but unable to. He described it as a ring of fire and the man couldn't escape. After that dream, he believed it was real, and so did I. It gave me a lot of comfort because it felt like whatever it was had been contained in that fire, unable to come out. The Hafiz completed the 40-day recitation, and thank God, things calmed down. After the 40 days, everything returned to normal. We stayed in the house for another 5 or 6 months and then eventually vacated. That's the whole account, and these were the incidents we experienced during that move-in 2018. Music.